Talbot, and I'm the head of marketing at Clozd. I'm joined by JJ.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Johnson. I'm the Director of Product Marketing and Growth here at Clozd. And today we're here to talk about how PMMs can use win-loss data to lead the go-to-market strategy.
I think it's a really exciting time for product marketers. I think they're uniquely positioned to drive change. There's a lot of emerging technology right now, primarily driven by AI, and as a result of that emerging technology, buyers are shifting their behavior. Product marketers are expected to adapt to those changes while still aligning sales teams, marketing teams, and product teams without actually having direct ownership of any of those functions. We've seen win-loss be an effective lever for product marketers, and it gives them the ability to really drive influence in their roles. In your role here as our Director of Product Marketing and Growth, how have you seen other product marketers effectively influence other teams?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dani. It's been interesting sitting in this role and talking with other PMMs that depending on the size and maturity of an organization, a PMM's role can vary in what they do. But I think there are a few common themes that we see amongst all PMMs. One, to your point, is it's the PMM often has to work across sales, marketing, and product and really align those folks. And the second thing that's common is as they do that alignment, it's really to help the organization stay customer focused. I think the great PMMs we work with really act as the customer advocate within their organization, and win-loss is an awesome way for them to show that advocacy and really gain credibility across the organization. And as I think about PMMs that really do that well, I think getting credibility from other groups comes from being able to bring interesting data and insights to those conversations that they're in. And I think win-loss data and sort of the richness that it brings allows you to bring kind of a unique set of data that others in the organization don't have. And I think what's cool about what you get from win-loss data is you're really able to telescope at a very high level or get very granular. With a tool like Clozd, when you aggregate a bunch of qualitative insights and be able to come with, hey, these just aren't anecdotes, but these are themes that we are seeing, that brings a lot of power. And then I think the icing on the top of that cake is when you're able to telescope in and say, hey, here is a specific quote that matters to you as a sales leader or as a product leader. And I think that brings real power, and I think that brings real credibility to the PMM, but I think most importantly allows them to be that customer advocate that they're meant to be. So I think when PMMs are able to do this, they really elevate the organizations they're at and make sure that they stay customer focused. Dani, you've worked with a lot of PMMs in your career. When have you seen PMMs using win-loss not only to elevate their company, but their own role?
I think it's a frequent occurrence that we've seen where product marketers, by nature of their ownership of win-loss and by nature of their role, get pulled into strategic conversations. When the board wants to understand why losses are going up, or when executive stakeholders want better visibility into win rates or into the top reasons why they're winning or losing, the product marketer in a lot of cases is the person that they turn to. The product marketer earns themselves a seat at the table because they have the credibility that you talked about and because they have the data to back it up. I think it goes beyond just anecdotal evidence, like, well, I think this is what we're seeing, or I think this is what I'm noticing in our CRM. We know from our own research that 85% of the time, the CRM-cited loss reason does not match the buyer-cited loss reason. The PMM has visibility into everything because they're able to see what's really happening under the hood. We have an awesome case study with our client Alteryx. Jason Klein talks a lot about how he inherited their win-loss program. He took it over. He established a more robust voice of the customer program. And through that process, they learned a bunch of things. They learned that they needed to more clearly differentiate from competitors. The product team started to consume more insights and use those insights to drive change. And importantly, Jason experienced growth in his own role. He gives some of that credit to the win-loss work that he was doing as one of the levers that was responsible for his growth trajectory at Alteryx. And I think we have seen product marketers do that and do that really well. As Clozd product marketing leader, how are you using win-loss in your role?
I think one of the unique things about Clozd is that one of our founders comes from a consulting background. And in consulting, a lot of what you do is you have a hypothesis that you're looking to validate or disvalidate. And so I think as a product marketer at Clozd, I use win-loss, and our team uses win-loss a lot of the time to validate or disvalidate hypotheses we have about our customers. We've recently had some conversations around who we think might be a new competitor in our space. And instead of just using anecdotes to think, oh yeah, that sounds about right, we've been able to look at our win-loss data and see whether or not that competitor is showing up in more calls. And there's tactical things in Clozd that make that easy to do. I set up a tag or an automatic tag within our system such that whenever this competitor shows up, I'm able to look at that. And once those show up in the calls, it's easy to share with both people in marketing, but also in sales of saying, oh, we talked about this earlier this week. It looks like this is showing up. We should chat about this more. Along with being able to tag items in interviews, you're able to comment as well. And I have found that is a really useful way to highlight information for specific people within our organization. And going back to my previous answer, all of this helps us stay more customer focused. It's very easy to get stuck thinking, oh, this is how I think things are. I find that win-loss data always brings us back to our true north of what our customer is actually telling us.
I think there are two interesting things that you talked about, both of which I have experienced the reverse in former marketing roles, where we were chasing a ghost competitor because we thought we were competing against somebody frequently. The sales team was telling us we were, and marketing had no idea whether we were actually going up against these organizations. It wasn't until we were able to access the win-loss data that we could really understand, well, how frequently are we going up against them? And then when we do, what's the buyer's perception about our strengths and weaknesses versus theirs? The other on the tags and comments is one way that our team frequently uses Clozd. This is one that I think other marketers are really interested in how we consume those insights. We love to subscribe to tags. So when somebody mentions an event, we like to know about it because we like to know that our investment of sponsoring that event was the reason that they heard about Clozd. We can't have that visibility otherwise unless we have a really good way to track it or they scan their lead at the booth. But win-loss has helped us to close gaps like that because we hear directly from the buyer about how they found us.
Yeah, I really like that. I think one thing, Dani, that I really like what you do is oftentimes I look through win-loss interviews with slightly a negative lens of, hey, how can we do this better? What I've noticed you doing specifically with our events team is when an event is called out in one of these interviews, being able to highlight and say, hey, this was awesome. And both using it as a learning opportunity, but an opportunity to shout out people on our team, which has been really cool. Dani, you've talked a little bit about how we use Clozd data. Are there any other unique ways you think our marketing team uses it?
Yes. My favorite way is our top of funnel program that we have set up. So in a lot of cases, marketing is sourcing either marketing qualified leads, MQLs, or sales qualified leads, SQLs. After the handoff, it is very difficult for us to understand what's happening. If we source a lot of those leads and a lot of pipeline, but they drop out of the funnel, it is hard to know why unless we hear that directly from the buyer. As we mentioned earlier, sales doesn't always know the reason why. And so our program that gives us visibility into top of funnel losses is really helpful because we can pivot really quickly. So if there is a gap in the sales process, or if we need to be more clear in how we message our solution, we know about it. I just learned through looking at some Clozd data that when a rep is able to clearly articulate the value of the product, they have an 84% win rate. That tells me that it's worth our time to invest in additional training for our reps and make sure that they're selling in a value-based way that demonstrates the outcomes to their prospects.
That's a super interesting comment about bringing value to the table. And I think having a stat like 84% that is caused because of the win-loss data you have really allows you to have influence and allows marketing to have an influence that you wouldn't otherwise have if there wasn't that number tied to it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The last thing we want to do is go to my peer in sales and have some sort of anecdotal story to tell him. It's a much more powerful story if I am backed by our win-loss data. The other one that I like that we run is looking at lost deals that are seemingly lost to no decision. What we've learned is no decision doesn't always mean it's a dead deal. We know that 1 in 10 deals is a win back. Sometimes the deal was lost to no decision because there was shifting uncertainty at the business, maybe leadership change, or they got their budget cut at the last minute. Our team is able to digest that information and then put those contacts into campaigns accordingly. If somebody says, you know what, it's not the right time for me, but I am interested in 6 months, then we'll put them into a campaign so we can re-engage those old leads later when hopefully they are ready and they have their budget secure.
I think that's an awesome point. And it's oftentimes we hear from so many of our customers of, hey, Clozd paid for itself by either winning one deal back, and it's something simple like that of understanding, oh, we can reach out to this person again in 6 months, and if it's a big deal size, it totally pays for the Clozd program. What I liked about what you talked about there is, yes, there is sort of the down the middle strike zone win-loss, but what we have seen both at Clozd and other places is people are using win-loss insights in other parts of the organization. Because really when we talk about win-loss insights, we're talking about rich feedback from a customer, and there are so many places across the customer journey where that would be really helpful. And I think with innovations like we've come out with the past, like flex interviews, it has been easier to collect that feedback not only at the point of win-loss, but at post-implementation or doing product research. And it's been really interesting to see how other PMMs have been able to leverage their influence into other parts of the organization. It's a very common story that PMMs come to the table with interesting win-loss data, and other leaders in the organization say, how did we get this? This seems really interesting. And it naturally opens up this conversation of, oh, we've reached out to customers and we interviewed them. And so we have lots of customers that are, of course, using us for win-loss, that are also using Clozd at other parts of their customer journey to get that feedback and getting similar results because they're listening to their customers. One of the things I've noticed talking with what makes a great PMM different from an okay PMM is I think okay PMMs act as gatekeepers to this information. They somehow feel like, oh, if I let other people see this, I will no longer be value in this process. And nothing could be further from the truth. I think being an evangelist for both win-loss data, but also any other type of rich customer feedback will allow both the PMM to shine, but allow the company, more importantly, to be able to focus on its customer. And Dani, Spencer, and Andrew earlier talked about some new innovations that we have that will make it easier than ever to collect rich qualitative feedback.
I'm so excited for the product updates that we're sharing at this year's Win-Loss Week. As Spencer and Andrew shared, we are expanding Clozd so that we can collect any type of rich qualitative feedback, not just data related to wins and losses, which is what you touched on earlier. I think a lot of people, product marketers, and likely their stakeholders across teams want better visibility into what's happening across the customer journey. They might want to better understand what happened post-implementation. They might want a deeper dive into the customer experience, or ahead of a renewal conversation, can be difficult to gauge customer sentiment. By opening up the Clozd platform, we can collect that feedback in a richer way than we've ever been able to before. I think we have always used a survey tool to do that. An interview or an AI interviewer will allow us to collect more deep feedback. An AI interviewer will allow us to still collect that feedback at scale, but will give us much richer visibility than we've been able to before.
That's really awesome. As I've chatted with product marketers, and I think this is true of so many jobs, we're all trying to figure out, AI is here, what does it mean for my job, and how can I do my job better? And I think this is a perfect example of, hey, how do I expand what I'm doing with the help of AI? To your point, for so long, we've sort of just defaulted to, hey, if we want to understand at a large scale what our customers are thinking, we use surveys. And I'm sure there's a time and place for surveys now, but this is a time where taking a step back and thinking, how can we do things fundamentally differently to hear from our customers is so important, both for, again, the PMM and their career, but also for your organization. One thing I am doing as a PMM right now is seeing, hey, where are all the places that we are currently collecting both customer feedback, but just also internal feedback, and thinking, hey, is there a way that we can, instead of sending out a survey, send something out like an AI interviewer, and how much better data could we get, and how much more rich data could we get if we have an interviewer? So Dani, I think my challenge, both to myself and to PMMs more broadly, is to think about, how can I leverage a tool like Clozd or other AI tools so I can better understand my customers? Coming away from this conversation, it feels like a really exciting time to be a PMM. Any final thoughts, Dani?
As we talked about, win-loss can be a strategic lever for our product marketers who, in a lot of cases, are translating those insights and turning them into real value for their organizations. As we open up the Clozd platform, there's a lot ahead and a lot of opportunity for them. So I would challenge our product marketers to think broadly across the customer journey, as you said, about points that could use additional value or additional insights so that we can really understand what's happening. I appreciate your time, JJ.
Yeah, it's been a great chatting, Dani.